bed moved around, I thought, oh, that'll be the cat. So I felt round for the cat, and she wasn't there. And then I realised probably the cat had heard the earthquake coming and taken off.
I thought it was my partner, who had got home an hour and a half earlier. He'd been out partying. I thought it was him getting onto the bed. Then I looked across and saw that he was still there. I looked over and saw the curtains swaying. I thought, shit! So I tried to wake him up, but he was so hard to wake up. I was thinking of my other son, who was in the other bedroom. He was 13. So I tried to wake him up again.
I woke up and I thought, what was that? Is my dog running around? No. And then I realised it's an earthquake. I was in bed, sleeping, and I woke up because the alarm went off. It was just about 4:30. And I thought, I'll just sleep for a little bit longer. I'll just go back to sleep. I was planning to get up to watch the live tennis soon, so I had a bit of time to doze. It was still dark outside, only a little bit of light, and just after that I felt a bit of swaying, like the bed sort of started moving back and forth. Not violently, just gentle rocking. Just still half asleep, and I thought I was dreaming. It was like a big truck had come and picked up the house. And that film E.T., where the kids are inside and their house starts moving, and then they go look out the curtains and they see a UFO has picked up the house. It was like that. I didn't think it was an earthquake. It just didn't come to my mind. By the time I was fully awake, I thought, oh shit, it's an earthquake.
So I was asleep, and I was woken by a massive jolt. It wasn't like a feeling I'd had before. And then it was moving the bed. It was sliding it up and down.
So there was a big shock, and I felt like I was bounced awake. I was bouncing around in the bed. I thought someone's jumping on the bed or something.
I wasn't sleeping well when the quake struck at 4:35 in the morning. The house really shook. I thought it was worse than the 1993 quake in Arthur's Pass.
I woke up and I could feel the bed moving from side to side, and I thought, what is going on? I thought it was my deaf cat who was asleep on the bed. I thought it was the cat playing. Then I looked over to my husband in the bed with me and said, earthquake!
And I thought it was my partner tossing and turning. That's what I thought, because he always does that. But it was different. The bed was moving round and around. It was a different feeling. But compared to what he does with the tossing and turning, it was just different. And then I fully woke up. And I looked around the room, and I got a shock because everything was moving. The walls were moving and the lampshade was swinging.
But I was so scared, it was so horrible. My first thought when I woke up was, oh my gosh, my parents are deaf, how am I going to do this? They might have not even felt it or anything, but they did. But it was so horrible. I didn't like it at all. Because it was 4 a.m, it was already sort of light, but not completely pitch black.
Right.
And with that light and the candles, she could see me. I could sign to her and stuff. But when the candles went on, everyone used their cell phone lights to see.
So I was asleep in bed, and I got up because I felt a shaking. But it wasn't like the shaking of an earthquake, more a vibration, like a train going past really close. And I looked out my bedroom window, had no curtains on it. And there was a street light shaking. I thought, what's happening? Then all of a sudden, the power went off.
So I went down and had a look to see what was happening with the neighbours and just said, hello, are you okay? And people were all right. There was one a bit down the road where things weren't so good. So I went over and had a bit of a chat to him. And he was saying that liquefaction had come up right through the middle of his lounge. And I said, what? How could it possibly come through the floor? But it had come up through the floor in his living room. Poor thing. Anyway, I had a bit of a chat with him, and then I talked to another one who was closer to my house, and he noticed that some of the bricks had come off the fence between our houses. And then he pointed out that on my side they'd also come off, which I hadn't noticed. There were quite a lot of bricks that had just broken and fallen out, and I'd not noticed that. But apart from that, our house was all right. There were no cracks or anything.
The ground was really rumbling. I went to have a look outside, and People were coming out of their houses, shining torches. Lights were coming in all directions. It was really confusing. I felt lost. I just couldn't see a thing.
After the earthquake, we really got to know each other really well. We'd invite each other over for dinner and things like that. It made us aware that we really needed to get to know our neighbours.
It was a real jolt. It was like being on a bunk bed and someone kicking you from underneath. Like a kick.
Then another one struck. A big one. There were a lot of aftershocks and I was holding my baby. And I told my son, remember I said these aftershocks will happen, but they'll stop. I didn't expect there to be so many.
So the aftershocks just kept going. They went on and on. They didn't stop, and they were very strong. And I could hear the windows clattering and the plates and the cups and saucers clattering and vibrating as well. It was very noisy. It was so strong. And then I ran to the door frame and held on to it. I was so scared.
So the aftershocks just went on, and the ground kept moving for ages. Every 20 minutes to half an hour there'd be an aftershock. Some of them were really frightening and some of them were quite weak. But yes, I think they went on for about, maybe a good month or at least a few weeks. It just kept on shaking. And I never got used to it. Every time I would scream and my poor husband was complaining that he was going to go deaf.
So I got out the torch and I could see that my drawers and everything in them had fallen onto the ground. The TV had crashed on the ground as well. The bed was okay, but the stuff on the windowsills had all come off. The bathroom was a mess. Everything was strewn onto the floor. And I walked through the hallway. But then there was another aftershock, so I held on tight. And then I kept walking once it had finished. It was just a shock. Everything had come out of the pantry. It was a mess. It was chaos everywhere. Cooking oil was all over the floor. The drawers had all come out in the kitchen as well. One didn't, and that was the one with cups and saucers in it. It was just horrific. It was a mess. And I was scared, but the power was out. So we went downstairs into the garage. There was cracks in the walls everywhere. The ground was busted up and cracked. It was huge, the damage. So we walked carefully over the ground, surveyed the place. Then we walked down the driveway and there was mess everywhere. It was massive and the neighbours were out there talking. We were in shock.
I was driving past the shops, that 24-hour dairy opposite the BP. It's on the corner of, I think it's Woodham. Yeah, the corner of Woodham, and I can't remember the name of the other one that intersects it. But... I can't remember, but yeah, I saw that the building was, half of it had just completely dropped off, it had been cut in half. It was incredible. I thought, oh my gosh, so I just kept on driving, and I was visiting my brother's partner's son's house, to check out their damage, and when I got there, the road was just like this. Oh, it was outrageous. And there's a river there, it's next to where I work, and the water had just pushed the ground up into these sort of ravines, and trees had fallen over, and it was ridiculous. As I was walking along, I saw there was a bridge that had just completely been twisted over by the earthquake. It was just destroyed. And the footpath was like this as well. And I saw across the road there was a house that had just sunk, like the Titanic, sort of half into the ground. This was much worse in our area. And, that stuff, the sand and water, liquefaction, that was just coming up everywhere as well, just spewing up.
Then we went into the garage and it was worse in there. There was this huge, thick layer of just sand and water and like a flood everywhere. And when we opened the door, it just came pouring out. And my uncle saw it and he just said, oh, shit, what are we going to do with that? It was just this mess everywhere.
I walked outside and could see that the road had cracks all in it. I thought, whoa. Then I could see the liquefaction everywhere. At the time I thought it was sewage, so I was trying not to step in it. It was quite smelly. The land was on a tilt, but the house itself seemed okay, apart from a few cracks.
So I went out to have a look and see what had happened in the garden, and the bird bath had smashed over, and there were 2 ornaments that had fallen, quite high ones that had fallen, broken their necks. That really broke my heart. And then, but otherwise, things outside looked okay. The windows looked okay, and I just sort of checked around the place. Everything looked all right. It was funny because in the house it was such a mess. And I had to be really careful walking because of the broken glass. I had to keep shoes on.
So the police told us that on the other side of Kaipoi was flooded. There was water everywhere. You couldn't get through that way. So we went back home and waited for half an hour till it was daylight. Then we went for a walk and saw how serious the damage to the houses was. The road was broken. There was a bridge that was twisted, and the shopping mall had its roof collapsed. It was awful.
I was riding my scooter to work when I noticed how badly the road had been damaged. There were just potholes all the way through. I didn't realise how much the shops in Rickerton had been damaged because I took a shortcut. But now I really saw that there were huge potholes. I came into Bigley Avenue and I saw that buildings had just fallen down, completely demolished. There was rubble everywhere. I was just shocked. Could not believe it. This is really major.
I was out driving, and my home was okay, but I was having a look around the district, and it was a mess. The roads were all over the place. There was damage, and there was debris that had fallen from buildings. I was going along Fitzherbert Ave and Beeley Ave, and there was just debris everywhere. And my friend, was saying, look at this, look at that. And I said, no, I've just got to keep my eyes on the road because it was just so difficult to drive. I had to concentrate.
I could see one building on the corner had completely collapsed. It was gone. I was in shock. That's when I realised how bad it was.
So you had to wait till the morning. So in the morning, about 7 o'clock, the sun came up and we could see everything. There was liquefaction just everywhere.
The street that I live on, well, my house is at the beginning of a little cul-de-sac. And I was looking, and I can see all the houses around the cul-de-sac, and I could see mud was filling up the street. It was just rising up. And I thought, oh no, I hope the mud isn't going to come into my section, because I could see it rising. It was sort of halfway up the street, but then luckily it stopped. But it really was a lot of mud. And there was a little boy, one of the neighbours, who came over crying. He was very distressed. He was frightened about the mud.
So my daughter and her partner all came over to my house, and we had to use the radio in the car for announcements. And he told us what they were saying, all the instructions they were giving out to people. So it was just the car and the driveway we were listening to in terms of what was happening, like emergency announcements around not drinking water.
We were watching the news on TV, but of course it was live, so no subtitles. And there was a hearing person in the room, and he was sort of, relaying the information to us. And then I noticed, there was information, going across the bottom of the screen, and so I could sort of learn what was going on in different parts of Christchurch. Looking back, I realised I probably should have pulled over and tried to figure out what was going on, but there was just too many things going on in my mind. I had to get to work, and I didn't know what to do. So I thought I'd better just get to work, and my hearing workmates would tell me what's going on. At the time, I didn't have any credit on my phone. I didn't have internet access, no laptop, or no real way to get a source of information. So by the time I got to work, I'd been waiting 4 hours since the quake. They told me it had been a 7.4, that's what they thought at the time, and they said not to drink the water. And I thought, that's a relief. Lucky we didn't have any water at home, otherwise I might have drunk it.
So we had a thought that the car radio might be working, and it was. There was an announcement about the earthquake, that it started in Darfield, and then it said that the power was all out, everything. So we really relied on our text phones in terms of information about what we should be doing, because I thought maybe there was a tsunami coming, or anything could have been happening. And if we had messages from Civil Defence just reassuring us, that would have been good, but we didn't have anything.
Either. And so we walked home. Jack sat on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him. Because we didn't have a radio and we didn't have power either. so I didn't know anything. My mum couldn't do anything, but then the neighbours came round and asked us if we had a radio, because they're very nice. And so they gave us a spare little radio thing, and we were like, oh, thank you. And so listening to the radio for information, it was quite hard because the mum and my stepdad couldn't hear anything, so they couldn't do it themselves. But
So did you have to tell them?
I did. Yeah, I
How
had
did
to
that-
tell them every bit of information that I got. Yeah,
Was that hard?
it was because I was scared myself, and my hands were shaking, so I didn't really feel like giving information, but I knew I had to, so I did. Buildings like the CTV building had fallen down. So many people have died. Rescue stuff. What to do, and yeah, it wasn't like extremely hard, but it was quite difficult. But yeah.
So we went to sit in the lounge. We thought, what do we do? I put the TV on to have a look, but there was nothing there. There was no news. We didn't have a radio to be able to access that. So I thought I'd have a look on the internet, but there was nothing there either. There was no information. Couldn't think what to do. So I thought I'd check my phone, but I'd run out of credit.
So when it came to what to eat, we had plenty of food. We were quite lucky. There was lots of food in the house. But we cooked outside. We're using a gas cylinder. And that was fine. We were lucky.
I didn't have any survival kit. I'd seen the information so many times that I knew that, of course, I should have water and I should have canned food and I should have first aid and all those things I knew. And I kept thinking, yes, I'll get round to it, but I never did it. So when it happened, I didn't have it.
Yeah, so it was a few days where we had no power. We had to wait for that, no water. We couldn't use the toilet for a few days.
I was waiting at home and I felt the earth moving and I felt a bit sad and a bit shocked. The power went off, there was no electricity and the toilet stopped working and I couldn't shower because the water in the hot water tank, the temperature just went down and down and down and it wasn't heating until it became cold. Yeah.
So Mum texts me straight away. She lives up north. She heard it on the radio and she texts me and she said, please fill up your bath with water. And I was like, what? Because the water's going to be cut off or it'll get dirty.
I texted my daughter, Joyce. She was fine. She had power on. We didn't have any power. Then I texted my daughter and son in Wellington. They didn't reply because they were still asleep. But after they woke up, we got lots and lots of texts.
So I was texting between my parents and they were fine. They were off for a walk. Mum and Dad live in Kaiapoi and they were out, they were good. But I got a text from my sister-in-law in Wellington telling me that Mum and Dad's house was damaged. So I was texting Mum and Dad to check on them, to see if they were okay, and they were telling me they were fine. It was really confusing. There were texts going everywhere. I texted Mum and Dad again and they said, there's no power, but we're okay. It was so frustrating. And I had no petrol in my car to get to them.
We all got together and checked, you're all right, and everyone just stuck together and we gave each other hugs and checked everyone was all right. The house looked fine. We were lucky. Not as bad as some other areas, much worse.
So I came out and there was a staff member just in front of me. I grabbed my bags ready to go out. And all of a sudden there was this huge swaying, rocking motion. I looked up at the wall above me. Last year there was some damage done and they put a brace to hold it up, but I wasn't sure. I didn't trust the fact that it would stay there, so I ran straight to the door frame and I ran as fast as I could and just held on. There was a staff member who was walking around the room struggling to walk, so I grabbed onto them and we held on under the door frame for quite a while, and then the rocking stopped a bit and I could see outside the window, outside the glass. It was just all white. It was dust everywhere. We didn't know really what it was, but we opened the door and we looked out and it was just dust and chaos everywhere coming into our eyes and everything. We went outside and had a look. You could see emergency services coming through, buildings coming down. It was like I was in a movie set. It was surreal. The traffic lights were down, cars were rolling backwards, everything was down. And then both of us went outside just to check if the guy next door was okay. He was an Indian shop worker, and he was climbing out of the rubble. He was okay.
It was a very different experience for me because I wasn't in Christchurch. I was in Dunedin. I was working there for the February one. I was working in a big hall. And when the Christchurch earthquake happened, I could feel it in Dunedin. It was just a wavy feeling. So I asked my interpreter, "Did you feel that?" And we were looking about the hall, but no one was reacting really. But I had a strong feeling, like a gut feeling really, that it was a big one, a bad one. So straight away I texted all of my girls and just flicked a quick text off to them and asked, "Are you okay? What's happened?" And then straight away one of my girls replied with just one word, "Huge." So it was a big one. And then I just had to wait for them to reply, and the replies came in, and I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. But really I couldn't do anything because I was way out of Christchurch. I knew that one of my girls worked in town, but I didn't know how bad it was. I thought it might have been similar to the September earthquake. But when I didn't get any replies to my texts, I knew it must be worse. Finally, all 3 of my girls replied, and they asked me what they should do. So I said, "If you're okay, just try to help other people." That's all I could say, really. Just be brave. Then someone came up to me who knew me from Christchurch, and they said that it was a bad earthquake. They'd heard that on the radio or on the internet or somewhere. And they said I was lucky that I was able to get a text through, because within Christchurch there were lots of problems with getting text through. So it was only because I was out of the area that I could do it. So of course my flight was cancelled. Luckily I had a rental car. So I explained the situation and asked if I could drop the car off in Christchurch at their office there, and they said yes.
February 22nd, wow, never forget that day. I was at home. I was just saying goodbye to my wife. I was ready to go to work. It was just before 1 o'clock. So I said goodbye, got my scooter out, wheeled out onto the road, and I took off, and I was enjoying life. As I was driving along my street, I could see all the trees on the side of the road, and they were just sort of swaying like a lot more than normal. I thought, that's weird, because I couldn't feel any wind, And then in the distance, I saw there was a truck. It was like a frozen goods food delivery truck, and it was just rolling all over the show. And the road was rippling towards me like waves, and so I had to jam on the brakes and pull over to the side of the road while the earthquake was going. And by the time it stopped, I felt as it stopped, I felt the road just drop. And I thought, whoa. And it really reminded me of the September 4th quake.
That day I was trying to decide what I should do. Should I get into town early or and have my lunch there, or just make my lunch here at home? I was trying to think what I should do. Then the decision was made for me, because the house started to move. The ground was rocking. It was so confusing. I just thought, shit. So I ran towards the back door and shut it. I don't know what I was thinking. Then I realised that the door had glass in it, so I ran the other way. It was really weird because I could see things moving and falling before I actually felt the earthquake itself. The TV fell, the drawers fell, and then I felt it.
Well, I was at school was walking to the playground, walking along the classroom, and when I got to the corner I turned around to go get a drink from the drinking fountain, and all of a sudden I heard this great big bang, and then it just started to go up and down, and the pool started to splash everywhere.
Oh.
And it was quite full.
Wow.
Yeah, kids were screaming. Yeah, and so we went onto the field to regroup in that, and there was a few more shakes, and then sewage came out of the field, so we had to move. Then another few, and then the sewage burst out of that part of the field as well, so we had to move again.
I was worried about my son at school, and first of all I just made sure that my wife was okay and reassured her a bit, and then said, look, I've got to take off and get him. But the traffic out there, it was just impossible to get through. So I took my scooter, and it was so difficult to ride because there was just water all over the east of Christchurch. The roads were just a mess, so I just had to weave my way through, and there'd be blockages, a lot of places that was just flooded, and so, I couldn't go ahead, and then I'd take a detour and then I'd get blocked on that as well. In the end, I ended up riding along the footpath to try and get to the school, and luckily the school had quite a good plan in place, how to take care of the children, so all was well there. Anyway, I found my son and gave him the passenger helmet and stuck him on the back of the scooter, and we just weaved our way home through the mess. But oh wow, that was a day that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Because the February 22nd sounded like it was a bomb going underneath the ground, like bang, and then it started to go.
So all the students were there, who were deaf, of course, and I was responsible for these 4 students, the middle and senior high school. And they were having a council meeting, so they were fine doing their thing. And I was there and thinking, great, I'll just enjoy my lunch, and had my newspaper out. I'll never forget what I was reading that day. So as I was reading, I looked at my watch and realised, only 5 minutes to go till the end of lunch. I better shoot off to the toilet before the lunch break ends. So I just stood up to go, and then I just got thrown by the earthquake. It was interesting. Firstly, it felt like going up, and then a sudden drop downwards, and then a big sort of shake. So as a teacher, my first thought was responsibility for the students' safety. And we were in the library, so all the books just came tumbling down off the shelves. Everything just came flying down onto the floor, and a glass panel. You see, we were in Sumner, which was very close to the cliffs, which was the epicentre of the fault line where the quake started. And so it was just a huge impact. So I looked around to see, where were the students. One boy was just standing there white with shock, looking at me. And I said, get down, get under the table. So finally he managed to get himself under the table. Another one was just paralysed, white as a ghost, just sort of frozen in shock. So I shoved that student under the desk as well. I know it was a bit rough, but for safety, I had to do this. And then there were 2 more left. I had a look around, and one I found under a heap of books. He'd stumbled, and then a whole lot of stuff had fallen on him. So I grabbed that student, shoved them under the desk, and that left one more who was a deaf-blind student. And he was stumbling around, of course, thinking, what's going on, what's happening? He had no idea what was going on. So I just ran over, and he'd sort of fallen, but I grabbed him. He was a really big boy, and I didn't have time to communicate properly with him. I just had to pull him basically under the table. With deaf-blind people, normally you would never pull them like that, but in that situation I just had to use all my force to force him under the table. So there they were, all huddled under the desk, and then it stopped. And once it stopped, I was able to explain to the deaf-blind student and apologise, like say, sorry I had to handle you so roughly, but same with the other students, it was for your safety. So we all filed out and had to climb over all the piles of books and everything to get out of the library. And once we were outside, we looked up towards Sumner where the shops were, and we could just see these huge clouds of dust. This was where all the big boulders had tumbled down off the cliffs and into the homes. So we could see all these beautiful homes up on the cliffs where the windows had come down and bricks were all over the place. And as we were walking, the aftershocks were still going. So we got to the playing field and we sat down on the ground. And when you were sitting there, it was really strange vibration. It was like marbles rolling around underneath, just this constant vibration.
I took my scissors and went to switch the equipment on. Then I went round to my workstation and set up the sewing machine and prepared the pile of clothes ready to be sewed. I put my scissors down and gathered the various tools together. And then I switched everything on and switched the spotlight on. When I was ready, I grabbed hold of my scissors and opened the pile of clothes and got some out to sew the necklines. And I was just ready to do that when the earthquake struck. The scissors flew out of my hand all the way to the other side of the room. I saw all the staff heading out through the staff room. I wasn't sure what to do and where to go. Then I saw a lady going to hide underneath a desk and holding on to the table leg. So I followed her and did the same, and we just looked at each other while the room was shaking. We weren't sure where the others had gone and what we should do. So we just held on. Suddenly there was a big jolt and a box came down off the table and hit my arm. And there was blood over my elbow. It felt quite sore. The other lady tried to help me and tell me to calm down because she saw I was crying. She said, "Don't worry."
I sat in the front of the office. There was a window in front of me and a window behind me. So I was sitting at my computer, just about to start eating my lunch, and then it rocked. All I could see was the building across from us, the cake building, completely collapsed. There was dust and debris everywhere. Just prior to that earthquake, I'd said to the staff, if an earthquake happens, we need to get under the tables. But I didn't do it. The room was swaying. It went up, it went down, it went side to side. I tried to stand up, and I could see the other staff member come to me. She grabbed me and I fell. All I could think of was that window behind me. The two of us decided to just get out of that building. We opened the door and got out onto the street. There was dust everywhere. People were just stopping in their cars and looking at each other. It just didn't seem real. It was such a different feeling. That's when I realised that all four buildings at that main intersection had completely collapsed. People were just running out of the buildings. We still had 2 staff members inside. They got out, and we checked on each other to make sure that we were okay. When we looked down, we could see that there was sewage everywhere. All I could think of was that if I'd got under my table, I would have been covered in it. There was liquefaction everywhere.
And Natalia was in the middle of luckily in the middle of the floor, just on her little mat, batting her toys and things. And yeah, it just hit. It was just all of a sudden, and I don't know, it just wasn't in your mind that we were going to have another big earthquake. It wasn't something that, I wasn't prepared for, or just hit, and I just grabbed her. That was my first priority, was just grab her, and I stood under the door frame. I was just like, oh, not again. Just grabbed her. My phone was right there on the coffee table, and that was the first thing I did, was just, "Are you okay?" Just straight away text Baz, and I was so lucky that I just got a reply straight back from him. So that was, as soon as I knew that he was okay, then I started texting everyone else. But the fact that we had that instant, and like it was, a matter of minutes really, that I knew he was okay, then I was relieved. And then I was just holding Natalia, and I turned and looked out our front door, and there was just water exploding out of the ground. Like, I thought that there had been a pipe burst or something. Like, it was like this high, just literally like a volcano coming so fast and so strong. And that was actually more panic for me, was seeing this water, and it was the amount that was coming out. I thought we were going to be flooded out, like it was just going to continuously rise, and like we were going to have to get on top of the roof or something.
So that night I had a sign language class, a New Zealand Sign Language class, and I had my papers all laid out on the table in preparation for that night. So all the papers were there, and I had a glass of water on the table too. And the family were in the lounge, they were fine, they were just playing. And I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to teach tonight? And I was just sitting there, and at that moment, that's when the earthquake started, a huge jolt. The water spilled over all over the paperwork. It was just massive. The ground was rocking. And my niece, it was her first time in an earthquake, she screamed and she said to me, the noise is terrible. Because I'm deaf, of course, I couldn't hear that. She said, it was so awful. And then it was just that panic. And my niece honed in on my son, grabbed him and took him under the table. There was 3 of us who went under there. Yes, 3 of us. We went under the table. But Michael, I don't know why he did this. Maybe it's because he's a guy. But he jumped on the table and he just held onto the table on the top while 3 of us were underneath. Strange. Anyway, so the earthquake kept going and I saw clearly in the kitchen the cupboard doors just opening and the plates and the cups just spilled out. It was a mess.
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah, I was at school in the art room finishing my artwork, and all of a sudden this big shaking, teacher's like, get down, so we all got under the tables, and it was so scary. Me and my friends were like hugging each other under the tables. It was actually quite big, but I reckon the art room was probably one of the worst places to be because all the artwork had been falling around us like glass and clay and stuff. One of the lights dropped and smashed all around the tables, which made it worse, like really worse.
I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget that day. February 22nd, I was at work and was just finishing up, telling all my workmates I wouldn't be seeing them tomorrow because my daughter's having an operation on her throat. So I told them I'd see them on Thursday. And I was just packing up and it was just before 1 o'clock and I was getting changed, putting the work clothes away, doing all the farewells and, just getting ready to leave. And walked outside and that is when it hit, a really violent shaking. My workmate named John, he was just panicking, getting thrown all over the floor. It was really violent, not like the September 4th one, which was sort of gentle rocking. This was violent shaking. I looked down the hallway and I could see the building was just twisting all over the place and the floor was going up and down. It was violent. I had to hold on to something. I saw 2 women come out who were just in shock. They were crying and I thought, Rachel's at school. Oh, God, it just really made me panic. Then I ran out and saw the manager of the building. He came running out of the toilet, white as a sheet, and pulling up his pants. I just had to try not to laugh.
The boss had told me to go out and buy some things for work, so I just finished buying that stuff and arrived back at work. And I drove in along the driveway. I was going to park the car out the back and then put all my stuff away. And then the earthquake struck and the ground was just rolling around and it was just instant. I just looked around to see what was happening and liquefaction was coming up out of the ground. And I saw a bunch of staff running out of the staff room. And I looked up to see the backpackers over the road and the whole front of that building had just collapsed and there was this massive cloud of dust. So I said to the staff, God, look at that. And then I thought to ask the staff, hey, where's my daughter Essie? They were all talking amongst themselves and I was still waiting for an answer. And finally someone said, I think she's gone out for lunch to meet a friend. So I texted her and asked her if she was okay, and she got my text and said, yep, she was all right. So the staff were all jittery and panicky, and I wondered why the staff had all run out of the staff room, but I found out that the chimney had collapsed into the staff room. I was due to be doing a job in there later on. So anyway, then the aftershock started and it kept rocking around and we all stayed outside and just saw the buildings shaking around. And then one of the staff who'd come out of the staff room said that she'd noticed that there was liquefaction coming up through the floor and it was just like it had come up in my home in September. That was kind of interesting that it was just, coming up through cracks everywhere. There was sand all over the place. One of the senior staff members told everyone to get their luggage and stuff. So everyone grabbed their stuff and took it out into the open, into the car park. And then finally I found Essie. She'd come back. She'd gone off to McDonald's to get her lunch, but she'd abandoned it and left it there because the earthquake happened and everything was just falling about the place. So we then went out to the front of the hotel and we were just shocked to see that the whole front of the hotel had collapsed. So the place where I'd just driven my car along the driveway had collapsed across the driveway. You wouldn't have been able to get through. And, you know, people were shouting and there was just general chaos. And Essie luckily could explain to me what had happened.
So 4 of us got out and decided to run back to work, and then we were coming down Gloucester Street. We got to, I think it's East Braden School, or West Braden? East Braden, and work was like a few hundred metres up from it, and we saw the building, like the hotel building. It's usually like this, but it had come out and away from the wall. And when we got closer, we realised that the whole ground floor, the second and third floor, had come down one. So, and then we were like, is anyone trapped in there? That was our initial reaction. So we were like trying to see, and we found out that one of our receptionists, Janine, she was trapped under there, and she'd just gone to the bathroom and was coming back as it happened, so it collapsed on top of her. But then like the fire brigades and stuff, they were there and they managed to rescue her, which was good, but she suffered a broken collarbone, I think collapsed lung maybe, and broken ribs, so it was quite horrible. And then after about 5 minutes of that, I realised, where's my dad? Because Dad worked there as well, so I was panicking and I didn't know where he was, and I was crying and I was trying to find him, and because of course he wouldn't have heard the sound of the earthquake, he would have just felt it like a few seconds after, and I don't know where he was, so I was like, right, like I didn't care about the broken glass or anything falling down on top of me. I just kind of ran to go make sure Dad was okay, and I found him and he was fine, and I gave him a massive hug and just kind of like make it kind of reassured me that he was okay. So after that I kind of went back out round front, making sure no one else was hurt, and then all the backpackers, of course, like all their stuff was in the rooms, they wanted their bags and stuff, so I offered to my boss Russell, it was my boss, my dad and me, all running in and out, getting bags and stuff, trying to, and like aftershocks were happening and the building had come apart again at like around by the swimming pool and stuff, so we had to be careful when there was aftershocks, like not to be there in case it collapsed. So, and it was hard for me because Dad, him being deaf, I couldn't get his attention without whistling, and he wouldn't have heard that by with the earthquakes and stuff going on, so it was pretty traumatic. Yeah, quite silly, but it was because I didn't want Dad going in alone, so I had to be the one to go in so I could communicate with him.
I was at the mall having a look at the jeweller's shop, looking at all the rings, and I was getting really excited about proposing at this point. And just like that, that's when the earthquake hit. It was huge, really violent shaking, and it was interesting to see how people reacted to this, and they started shouting and they were on their phones. It was really interesting. I managed to stay pretty calm, but it was really interesting to see how everyone else reacted. Then I saw that the floor of the mall had started cracking. The earthquake was making these massive cracks all through the tiles. It was really powerful. I thought, whoa, the earthquake must be pretty strong if it can break the concrete tiles underneath and the tiles on top. All the lights were shaking and the clothes racks were falling over. I thought, whoa, this is big. I saw Ellie in the shop and I asked if she was alright. And she said, yeah, I'm fine. Let's just get everyone outside. So I helped her calm everyone down and get them out of the mall. Some people were out of control. They were falling over and running around. People were just really terrified. When I got out, I saw my scooter had fallen over, so I picked it up, and that's when I noticed that there were a couple of hundred people that hadn't even noticed the liquefaction that had started gushing out of the ground. So I told them to move out of the way, and I sort of tried to get them over to a safer spot. There were some old people there too, so I thought it might be good to get them out of the way. It was just outside the front door of the mall, just out on the left. That's where it was sort of gushing up from. When I first saw it, I thought it might be sewage or something, but no, it was actually just stuff from deep under the ground that the earthquake had pushed up, and it was just gushing out like a fountain. This was in the South City Mall, and it was just all over the road, and it was spreading along the footpath. It was everywhere.
That day I was going out to the park. I work with dogs, and that day I had 8 dogs to pick up in my van, so I picked them all up, and I remember we got to the park at about 12:20, and it was at Hallswell Quarry, who were taking them to the park there, and it was a bit unusual. There was really nobody there. It was quite empty that day. So anyway, we were walking along with the dogs and on the flat part, and then got to the hill. And there's an area there where there's sort of a bit of a lake, and the dogs love to play in the water. And I thought, oh, well, I'll head up the hill because I wanted to get a bit of fitness practice. I had a fitness course coming up in March, so I thought, oh, well, good fitness. So I walked up to the halfway point, and I was puffing a bit. The dogs were all having a good time playing around. So just after the halfway point up the hill, I suddenly felt the earth shaking. I thought, oh, shit. And I saw a post, so I grabbed onto that. It was the only thing around, and I grabbed onto it, and I was kind of screaming, and the ground was just rocking around, held tight onto this post, and I saw the dogs just take off in a group up one side of the hillside. So I looked at them, and then I looked across the opposite side of the hillside, and there was this rock slide. There was a whole lot of rocks and stones just falling down the hillside, and I imagine it must have been really noisy. Of course, I couldn't hear it, so I just stood gripping onto my post while the earth rocked, waiting for that to finish. And then my dog came over to me, and the other dogs just sort of stayed where they were, so I just sort of stood there quaking.
When it happened again, we grabbed onto the railing. We looked up and we could see all the staff and students running around, so I took the boy, and he was really white, but I was trying to stay positive. We regrouped with everyone else and gathered together. It was a really emotional event. Some students were crying and people were feeling upset, texting out to their friends and family. It was a really fast response. We decided we'd go over to the park across the road, but then for some reason we started walking towards the staff room. We thought all the quakes were over, but then it happened again. The ground started shaking and all the students got down. And it was good to see they knew what to do because we'd prepared them before. They all got down and stayed down.
I went to Deaf Club on, I think it was a Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday, the day the earthquake happened. I was early for my 1 o'clock appointment. I arrived, I think it was 12:45, 1:45. I checked at the office when I got upstairs, and the administrator, Jane, but she was busy, so I just left her to it. I went back down to talk with Brent. We were parked on a driveway next to the wall, and both our boys were in the car as well. My boy was sleeping on Brent's side, and Brent's boy was sleeping on my side behind me. And so we were just talking. Everything seemed pretty normal. And then all of a sudden, there was this big, how do I describe it? It was like a wave-like movement. I moved up and down, and Brent moved up and down. Off our seats. It was a huge force. It was weird to see his head go up and down, and I was going up and down. I looked out onto the road, and I saw a lamppost, and it was actually moving. And then the bricks from the music school were falling out and falling over. I was so shocked, and I was gobsmacked. And then I saw Brent. We hopped out of the car, and he was standing over a huge crack in the road. He panicked and jumped out. I was scared, trying to figure out what to do. Do we drive away? Do we run inside? I grabbed my boy, and Brent grabbed his, and we ran out onto the street. We were so scared. We saw so many people doing the same as us, running onto the street. And we thought perhaps we were lucky, but then there was always the risk of having a building falling over us. So we walked into the middle of the road to stay away from the buildings. Heaps of people in their cars trying to get out of the city. I think of the impact for the hearing people with the noise. Deaf people can hear nothing, but we still feel.
I'd just gone over to a client's home. She'd just moved into a new house recently, and so I was going over to have a visit and see the nice place, and we were sitting in the lounge just chatting away, and then at 12:51 suddenly, you know, most earthquakes sort of just start gradually, but this was just a violent jolt. It was just absolutely wild. Up and down, everything was moving. And, you know, the deaf client was like she was actually reacted by laughing. She was giggling and thinking it was funny. And I'm saying, come on, get on the floor. And I got down on the floor because it was, you know, there was just too much shaking going on. It was really hard to get down. So we got down on the floor until it sort of calmed down a bit. And the father came into the room and tried to grab the TV. And I said, don't, just leave it. You know, it's already fallen. The screen was already flat on the ground. I said, don't worry about the TV. So we just sort of held there until it came still. The mum was in the kitchen making a cup of tea, and she came out. She was in hysterics. She was just about having a heart attack. So I tried to calm her down, and she was weeping. And, you know, I tried to say, come over here on the floor with us. So, but the client on the other side was watching this, and she was kind of laughing until she saw her mother crying in shock. So I sort of tried to get them all huddled together on the floor just to calm everybody down and make sure everyone was safe. Really, I wanted to cry myself, but I thought, I've got to try and be professional here. So I tried to keep calm and make sure everyone was okay. So out in the backyard, it was amazing. All the stuff that had come up, it looked like a lovely beach. The only thing missing was a palm tree. Anyway, that was liquefaction. I'd never seen that before. That hadn't happened in the September quake at my place. A guy came and helped me dig it up. I was really grateful. Luckily, a generous company from Auckland arrived in Christchurch with a great big container with shower cubicles in it. And that was set up just around the corner from my place, which was fortunate, but it was still a nuisance. I'd have to get up in the morning, drive there in my pyjamas with my bag of clothes and my towel and everything, and get there, park the car, you know, say hello to everybody else that was there, and then go into this really cold container. You'd have your shower and then go home again. But if you forgot one thing, you know, your roll-on or your moisturiser or your shampoo or your towel, it was a damn nuisance. And once I got home, then I'd pack my bag ready for the next day's shower. So I used that for 2 months, and also my friend who had water at her place.
Oh, of course. I had cuts all over my feet and just carpet burn as well. And from hitting the wall, I had bruises all over my legs. Oh, and as well, I had quite a stiff neck and a sore back, and I think that was just through moving and the impact of the earthquake.
And we got home, I was standing by the pantry and I was on an open door, and then the next 6.3 happened, and a few things started to fall from the pantry and hit me.
Ow.
And I actually saw the liquefaction coming out. It was horrible because it was like water, but really dark grey. It was just coming out like a rushing river.
Wow.
And I didn't have any gumboots.
The laundry block came down. That was a sad sight to see. Not surprising, there were huge cracks all the way through. It was really unsafe. When I was there, I had the idea to talk to the site worker, and I told him I was deaf, and I asked him if we could maybe take away some of those laundry bricks, maybe 100 or 200. It'd be nice to keep as memoirs for the deaf community, so that when members of the deaf community come by, they can take one away as a memoir. He said, yeah, not a problem. He told his workers to gather them up and put them aside. We gave them to the gardener to keep, so that when the oldies come through, they can take one away for free and have it as a memory. It's all gone now. All the students were sent home for 1 or 2 weeks. And then a little bit later, I was asked if, what I thought we should do with the students, and we decided that some of the students who had been sent home would stay there and they would attend their local schools just temporarily, and then some students, we would get a group of them and we'd go up to Kelston, the deaf school in Auckland. They asked me if I would accompany them, and I was more than happy to do that. And yeah, I think it was a good choice because, I knew sign language and I could communicate with them, and I think it was good for them to be able to confide in me and see, a deaf adult responding in a positive way. It was a good model for them, I think, to get them through it. So I went up to other staff members to try to get some information, and they said, "Oh, hold on, we won't talk about this in front of the deaf children." And I thought, "Oh, it's a bit strange. The deaf children, why not? They need to know what's going on. They need to understand what an earthquake is and what this means. Whether you're an adult, an old person, or boys and girls, everyone needs to know what this means, and everyone needs to have access to information." They said, they might get scared or they might be a bit sensitive. And I thought, well, if the deaf children be like that, adults can be like that too. And I thought, this is just a bit strange. It made me think of my family. I have 4 deaf children who are all deaf, and no matter what the situation is, we all have access, equal access to information. So I said, no, you need to tell me what's going on here. So they said, hold on. They were just listening to the radio, and it was a bit hard for them too because communications were a bit hairy. And finally they told me that the Sumner area has been closed due to the houses being damaged by falling rocks, and it was too dangerous, so we couldn't get out that way. And then all the residents from the Sumner community started coming into our school. They were driving in their cars and parking on our field, and that was all right. And then some hearing students from Sumner School started piling in, and the whole school assembled there. So there's a big group of hearing students and our small group of deaf students. And as I looked over, I could see the hearing adults sort of discussing what was going on, and the hearing children listening. They were getting their information that way. I thought, that seems fair, but none of that for our deaf children. One of our staff told us to just be careful what you're signing around the deaf children, because we don't want to give them the full story about what's going on. And I thought, well, the deaf children should have full access to the information as well. They need to know what's going on.
We got permission from Sarah, the Earthquake Authority. It took a while. We had to sort of wait quite a long time, quite a few weeks. But we'd asked if we could take out essential sort of business items from the club. We were given like a safety briefing. We were told to get some clean wheelie bins from further down, and then we walked to the deaf club with 3 wheelie bins between 2 of us. It was me and Ron who went. Then we had to wait around we couldn't get access into the door. We had keys, but the door just wouldn't open. So we had to wait for a locksmith to come, and they struggled for about 5 minutes, and it was just earthquake damage. So they managed to jimmy it open. We'd had a sort of good look around. I'd seen the office, but the bar we'd had a look in, and that was a complete mess. We had sort of big tall chillers, and they'd sort of come out, and the doors open, and all the beer had fallen out onto the floor. So there was just broken glass and, a wee pile of it. The till had gone all skew-whiff. All the glasses, or lots of the glasses, had fallen down and broken. And the floor outside the bar, which was wet on February, was now just sticky. Mm-hmm. But I think from the historical information, I think most of it will be okay. In the hall, we have some remove cupboards with a lot of historical things in there, and we were surprised to see most of it was actually intact. Very few things had fallen over, that just shifted around. So I think the history of the club is mainly intact, which is, lovely. We're really lucky that that's happened.
Before the earthquake, life was smooth and just going along as normal. And then the earthquake came along, and that just changed everything. The Deaf Club itself is in the red zone, and so we can't access the club. But people need to come to a club to keep the community together. So at the moment, we're having to borrow premises, use other people's club rooms on a Friday night, and alternate between a club in Riccarton and a club in Woolston. And we asked the members what they wanted, and some of them said, well, why don't we alternate it so we have Riccarton once a month and Woolston once a month, and just go between the two places, because most of the deaf community live on the eastern side near the Woolston area. So we had to sort of share it out fairly. But it's important to bring the community together, because deaf people want to share their stories about the earthquakes and just not keep it to themselves.
I was watching the news on TV and the interpreters came on, and I thought, oh wow, that was just really good to see them there.
My mum was quite happy. She was real happy that there was interpreters, because the subtitles actually weren't working, I think. Yeah, no, they weren't. So it was good to have interpreters on the TV, which was really good.
Someone was interpreting for that's what they were saying, and that was like your focal point, because everyone was at home, you know, no one was going to work, and so the news was just on all day, and none of it was subtitled really, I don't think. Or they didn't have subtitles on the TV, that's right. So I was interpreting a lot of what was being said on there, and so once there was an interpreter on, it was just so nice. I was like, I can have a little break. Yeah, no, it was fantastic, and just to have, you know, Jeremy and Evelyn and such good interpreters, and it was just, I remember they saying, so clear, you know, and he was just relieved to know that he could get access in his own language to what was going on. Yeah.
When I saw the interpreters come on TV, I was really pleased about that. It was good. They were on with the mayor, who was talking about what had happened and what people should do, and there was an interpreter beside them, and I was really glad to see that. But they kept cutting the interpreter out of the shot, and I kept wanting the mayor to move over so I could see the interpreter, but it was really helpful.
Yeah, I think it was especially good having the interpreters on there, because the subtitles sometimes they miss things, like the important things, so it was good to have the interpreter there so they could actually follow what's going on. They weren't left out of the loop or anything, so they knew firsthand where to go, what to do, and who to contact if they needed anything. So it was good having them there. So I hope if there is another earthquake, they're back again to kind of help out for the deaf community.
Well, as I mentioned on the first day, my boss, my manager, rang and just said he was making phone calls locally and also nationally. Rachel Noble, who's the CEO from Deaf Aotearoa, was trying to kind of work with people, I suppose, at a higher level, more ministry level, to get interpreters on TV to actually get the information out there. Not, I suppose, initially for the Christchurch deaf community, but more to reassure nationally the deaf community that what was happening in Christchurch, they would be able to have the information too, and it would reassure them that their family and friends were okay. And then the impact also for the Christchurch people that had access to power, because that was a huge issue. It was fine having interpreters on TV, but the most affected places, which was the east side of town, had no access to power, and that's where a lot of deaf people live.
Well, I think, leading up to it, I was very nervous, just because I knew it was going to be broadcast to so many people, and also just the fact that I was feeling very jittery and a bit shaken, especially after a couple of days. That first sort of day, it was a bit more on adrenaline, I suppose, but was starting to, the enormity of the whole thing was hitting, and how lucky I felt we'd been, and everything. So all of those things combined, I was feeling quite nervous and a bit uptight and all of that. And so because of that, I decided to arrive very early at the first briefing. I allowed enough time so I'd be there an hour early, just so I could see where it was going to happen and get as much preparation as I could. And so I arrived at the point I've been told to get through the cordon, and I was told that that's no longer where you can get in, and so I had to go to the other side of the city, which took probably about 20-25 minutes just because of the traffic and everything. So I got there and then was told, oh no, actually it is the other side where you were, but it's the next road over, and so I had to go all the way back around. And when I finally got through the cordon in that first that first bit. It was after the time that the briefing was supposed to start, so I think it was a 5:30 briefing, and it was about just on 5:30 when I finally got through the cordon, and so this was stressing me out even more. I hate being late, and especially to such a big event, and so shot through and arrived at the art centre, which is where they held those briefings, about 10 minutes late, and just thought, I'll just go in and I'll pick up where I can, but luckily they were a bit late starting, and they were just walking in and just starting to get ready when I arrived. So I went in and I stood next to the mayor, and just as we were walking in, there was quite a significant aftershock, and so I stood there with all the journalists and everything, and in the tiered setting. It was kind of like a theatre setting, and then the mayor started discussing the earthquake that had just happened, and so I was sitting there just waiting for that to finish and then the briefing to start, and I didn't realise that actually that was the start of the briefing, and it was just a nice laid back way of them starting. And so he then looked at me and said, you gonna sign this, Jeremy? And yeah, so so that added to my nervousness as well. I mean, nothing went well.
Didn't really get any preparation. It was just I was going to have to go with whatever came out of people's mouths and do my best. I suppose the nature of a media briefing is just get information out there, and so there's not really much consideration for an interpreter, and so it was just had to keep up with the pace. No, I probably didn't get a lot of the technical stuff. Jeremy was fortunate or unfortunate to get a lot of the technical stuff, talking about the Richter scale and the liquefaction and how all the pipes and everything. But so he had to come up with a lot, and so just by me watching what he was doing, I could okay, right, let's try and be consistent in our signing and try and use all the same things. So talking about sewage and all the pipes and where they're broken, and it was a lot of complicated information, but also about the seismic activity and how that's recorded and how people talked about that. That was a challenge.
It really did feel daunting the first couple of times, and especially standing there before the briefing started, just seeing everyone there with the hundreds of cameras and all of that was very daunting. But as soon as the actual interpreting started, that it just seemed like, just click into interpreting mode and it's information in, information out, and it's almost like all of those other things, there's not enough room in the mind to consider all of that. So I did feel at times very drained, and sometimes almost felt a bit depressed, I suppose, but it wasn't like an actual depression. It was more dealing with all of the stuff, and that was sort of a reaction that I was having to all of that, and so I would definitely if I look back at my whole life, I would say that period was probably the most stressful period that I've been through in my life. And one thing I found really good was just going for runs, actually. Just go for a run and just push the body until it hurt, and then just keep pushing through. And I don't know, it's just something for me that really helps with dealing with stress and dealing with those sort of emotions. So.
I had a couple of experiences. One was actually having to interpret when an earthquake aftershock took place, and kind of standing there going, I'm just going to follow what other people were doing, because it kind of shook quite a lot, and then having to just kind of get on with interpreting. And then the other one, which was very noticeable to everybody, media and everyone that was working on what I would say the front line, was the mood in the room when it changed from rescue to recovery. That announcement had a huge impact on people, and the mood and just the feeling in the room, it just kind of dropped. There was this silence, and it was kind of like people were paying respect that the earthquake had taken a new step So we'd worked really, really hard. Well, everyone had worked really, really hard to try and rescue as many people as they could, but it had to come to the point where, okay, now we're going to have to recover.
Seeing how Mum has coped through all of this and she's been so strong and everything, it's kind of made me like look up to her more than I already do, and just made me so proud of her. So yeah.
There were 182 people killed in the quake, and one of them I knew, my workmate at Bunnings, her mother was killed in the quake. And how I found out was I saw her on the news and she was crying and looking really upset, and I thought, what's she on there for? And it wasn't until after, when I read in the paper, that I found out her mother on that day had been planning to meet her daughter and her brother, and she was going to announce to them that she was getting married again. They were going to meet in Latimer Square, I think, for lunch. And it was just before that the quake hit. And of course, she was working in the CTV building, which just collapsed. It was absolutely demolished. And when it happened, they didn't know how many fatalities there were, and it was just chaotic. But after that, they found out, and it was really sad. And because I knew her, I'd worked with her, it was really tragic. And there were a few other people I knew that had been killed, and it was really sad.
So after the February 22nd quake, my GP had his office in the city. He'd moved after the September earthquake from his office to premises in the CTV building, and they thought it was going to be safer there, and it was just a temporary move. And then the February quake hit, and that building came down. And I didn't really think about it immediately, but my wife said to me after a while, she said, "What was your GP's name again?" And I gave her the name, and she said, "Yeah, he was one of the fatalities in the CTV building." So that was, so upsetting. My doctor knew me, and he knew my medical history, and, he had all my records and everything. Yeah, not easy really, because, if he was a doctor and I had a rapport with him, so it meant that I would have to find another GP, and, it would be difficult to have that, to find the same kind of relationship. It wasn't easy at all.
Yeah, my advice would be to have a first aid kit and have it ready. To have dry food, bottled water, have it all ready in a kit. And to have that kit near a window. So somewhere where it's easily accessible, not in the middle of your building. And that's just because if the building collapses, you want to be able to access it easily. Also to have a hard drive to put all your family photos onto it. Within our family, we've agreed on a meeting place. So we know where to go to should anything happen. If you're stuck, we've arranged with family outside of Christchurch to be able to text them. We've got family in Wellington and Australia. So we can send texts to make sure that people know we're okay. And if it happens, if we were at work or if you're at the shops, if something big happens, we've all decided that we come straight home, that home is that safe place. You don't want to stay out there, and you want to get home before those roads are all blocked off and you're stuck out there.
Some tips for earthquakes, tie your cupboard shut with the cloth. That's what my friend does.
Yeah.
To keep things falling down. And if you've got any really valuable things, keep them low so they don't fall from heights and smash. So it's good to have heavy furniture so you can get under it.
Yeah, good point.
And if you've got a big yard or there's a park near you, it's good to go there and stay there because nothing can fall down. And if you're in the city, get out as fast as you can.
Yeah, there's been lots of changes for our lives now. Deaf Club has moved. We're using 2 different working men's clubs. For my son, his school has changed. He now attends night school. And my workplace, I've had to move to a different building and it's further from home. It's not very deaf friendly. Yeah, there are more difficult things now. One of the biggest things was going back to work. You know, the aftershocks were still happening and all I could think of was my son. I hated the thought of being at work and all of us being spread out through Christchurch. I was just worried and wanted to know if he was okay, so there were texts going everywhere to make sure that we were okay. And driving. There's potholes everywhere in Christchurch and I'm sick of driving through them. I've already had one scooter accident and it was driving into a pothole. And the stuff that liquefaction leaves behind is really slippery, so I don't use the scooter anymore. I don't drive at night anymore because I can't see what's there, and I don't drive in the rain. And just those road closures.
Yeah, just being able to share stories and to connect with other people like us all. We all want to just tell our story and share it with people, and when you don't have other people that you can that don't understand your language, then I think that's another sort of level that can sort of build up of worry or frustration. Yeah.
People had really different reactions to the quake. Some people made a joke out of it and didn't take it that seriously, and others were more interested in sharing their experiences and got a bit more emotional. And even at work, people would play jokes on us, like shaking the chairs to make us panic, and so we told them, like, it's not funny. It's not cool, but they didn't really care. But yeah, it really made me happy that there were people who I could share my experience with, and we could talk about how it made us feel. Well,
everything was so damaged. The ground was damaged, and I went for a walk with my dog, and the ground was just all uneven. It was hard to walk.
I've learned to cope more with, like, not because I've been through it. Some bad situations aren't as bad now, that I can cope with them better. I've learned to, like, my senses have got stronger, like, as in to feel the movements. Even small ones, I feel them now. Like, my senses have, like, pricked up and stuff. But yeah, I've learned a lot from this experience. Some things have been easier that would have been really hard for me before the earthquake. Yeah, be like, well, this compared to the earthquake, well, this isn't bad now. Like, this isn't so bad. Heaps of places I can't go, like, just heaps, like, pretty much everywhere is so, like the mall was so nervous to, like, just walk in. It's like, well, what if there's an aftershock? Like, it's hard to go places that are quite tall and two-storied now. But then again, you learn to just forget about it and just, if it does happen, well, you know what to do.
Yeah. I've got a few words for it, actually.
Yeah, give me
horrible, disastrous, not really good.
Not good. All because of
horrendous, because 161 deaths during the February earthquake, and 80 people moving from my school.
80.
We lost quite a few.
Why did this happen to me now at my age? I was hoping for a peaceful, calm retirement, having an easygoing life without many worries, and now this has happened and I have to plan for a different kind of future, a different life. I didn't want that.
Yeah, I hope another one doesn't happen, because I really want next year to be good.